Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. This is our standard form. Graphing this isn't too terribly bad. It's just a little more involved than graphing from vertex form. So vertex form, just to remind you, is this. So this was vertex form, and this was really easy to graph from because you just had to figure out to go opposite and go left or right inside, same on the outside, up and down, and you can graph it. This one takes a little more work to get to. What I want you to note is that the letter A or the number A is with the x squared, B is with the x, and C is by itself, because we're going to need those here in a minute. So when we go to graph this, the first thing we need to find is our vertex. To find the vertex, the x value is going to be negative b over 2a, and then the y value we're going to find. But you need to remember this negative b over 2a. It's always going to be negative b over 2a. So if I give you this example, y equals x squared plus 2x plus 3. What's the a, b, and c for this equation? A is 1, b is 2, and c is 3. So if I want to find my vertex, I first have to write down, well, what is negative b? If b is 2, what's negative b? Negative 2. Over 2 times a, 2 times what?
1.
2 times 1, which is just 2. So the x value of my vertex is negative 1. If you know an x, how can you find its y? Plug it into the equation. So we're going to take this negative 1, and everywhere we see x, we're going to plug in negative 1. So I'll have negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 plus 3. Negative 1 squared is just 1. Minus 2 plus 3. So I have negative 1 plus 3, which is going to be 2. So when x is negative 1, my y is 2, and that's my vertex. Okay, now we're going to graph it. The a term still tells you the same stuff that the a term told us in vertex form. Our a term was 1, so does that mean this is going to be a smiley face or a frowny face? Smiley. And then we're going to find one other piece of information. Oh, my arm. So, I'm sorry, I'm going to graph this slow. So I've got negative 1, positive 2. That's my vertex. The other thing we're going to find when we do this is our y-intercept. To find your y-intercept, you're basically plugging 0 in for x and finding what y equals. So if I plug a 0 here and a 0 here, that all goes away. The y-intercept is always going to be whatever that c term is. So our y-intercept is 3, which means that's where it's crossing the y-axis. So I'm going to put a dot there and then draw my graph. Oh my gosh, that's not very good. I think my pen's off a little bit. And then we're going to do everything we did on the other graphs. We're going to do axis of symmetry. Here would be x equals what? I'm not telling you this. What's the x value? What's negative 1? The domain, everyone should know the domain.
Negative infinity.
Negative infinity to positive infinity. The range, the lowest y value I have here is 2. So I'm going from 2 to infinity. What am I missing? Oh, is this a min or a max?
Min.
Minimum. I think that's it. So we're adding on the y-intercept this time. And that just helps us graph. And it's always going to be, your y-intercept is always going to be your c term. Okay? Shall we try another one?
Yeah.
Okay. Should you say hold on?
Right.
Okay. So for our next example, we're going to flip it upside down. The next one is going to be y equals negative x squared plus 2x minus 5. So we need to pick out what is A, B, and C. You can just sit over there.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, what's our A term?
Negative 1.
-1. What's B?
2.
And what's C?
Negative 5.
-5. We're always using negative B over 2A. So if I have to do negative B, that's
Negative 2.
just a -2 over 2 times a -1,
Negative 2.
which would be -2. So what is your Y value, or what's your X value?
1.
1. Okay, now you guys on your own paper plug in the 1 and let's see if we agree on the Y. Be careful with this negative. That's not part of the X. That's not what's being squared. The negative's just out front. So now you just have to plug this in for X's. Okay, so I plugged my 1 in for my X's. 1 squared is 1. And then that negative out front, so that became a -1. 2 times 1 is 2, and then I have my -5. Add all that together and you get -4. So my vertex is 1, -4. What's my y-intercept?
Negative 5.
Okay, the y-intercept is -5. Which I don't need that, just -5. So when I go to graph this, I go to 1, -4 for my vertex. -5 is my y-intercept. Without even looking at your A term, having your y-intercept below your X or your vertex means that it's going to be a frowny face because you got to go through your y-intercept. So this looks like this. Oh my gosh, draw better than I do. I think my pen's just off just enough.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is. It's hard.
And then we can do everything else. What's the axis of symmetry? X equals what? Did I hear a -1?
No.
You heard a 1? Yes. X equals 1. What's the domain?
Negative
-infinity,
infinity.
+infinity. What's the range? -infinity up to what?
Negative.
Up to -4. And is this a min or a max?
Max.
Maximum. Easy enough?
I guess.
Okay. Do you guys want to try one by yourself? Or you want me to do one more with you? By yourself? Okay. Well, we can try. If we need to do another one, I do have another example. Okay. Try this one. Y equals negative or x squared minus 8x plus 5. Okay, let's check our vertices to see if it's the same. So you do negative b over 2a. B was negative 8, so I used a positive 8 over 2 times 1. So I have 8 over 2, which is 4. Then I plug 4 in for my x's, and I have 4 squared to, minus 8 times 4 plus 5. So 16 minus 32 plus 5 works out to be negative 11. Everybody agree with that? No? Yes? Okay, so what is my y-intercept going to be? So here's vertex. Okay, the y-intercept is going to be 5. So if I go to graph this, I'll have positive 4, negative 11. I don't know if that's negative 11. And then we're going to go, the y-intercept is 5. It's way up here. So this is what this graph looks like. And then the axis of symmetry would be x equals 4. The domain is all real numbers, negative infinity to positive infinity. Range is negative 11 to positive infinity. And that is the minimum. Yay? Do we need to try one more, or are you ready to try some on your own? Huh? On your own? Okay. What? X equals 4. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to change the directions that are in the book. Alicia, I'll get you a book too. Page 206, 8 through 11, and 17 to 21. I want you to do everything on all these. Vertex, graph, y-intercept, axis of symmetry, domain, range, min or max. I think that's it. No, 17 and 21. Yep.
What was the range on this last two?
It would be negative 11 to infinity.
They should be